Fantasy football is almost here. So today we take a moment to look at one of the most difficult positions to figure out in fantasy football, the running back position. With injuries, backfield committees, and stubborn coaches like Bill Belichick all working to cloud the position more and more each season, it can be difficult to accurately rank running backs on a yearly basis. That's why we're here. I'm Andy Ruther, and today I'll help you make sense of this year's crop of fantasy running back with my list of the top 20 heading into the 2016 season. At number 20, Matt Forte. Forte goes from playing behind a poor offensive line in Chicago to playing behind another bad offensive line with the New York Jets. At the age of 30, Forte's numbers saw a major decline in 2015, but even with his best years behind him, having a better team around him in the Big Apple should allow Matt Forte to produce enough to make him a useful RB2. At number 19, Jeremy Hill from the Cincinnati Bengals. Hill lost offensive coordinator Hugh Jackson, but he'll still be running behind one of the AFC's most fearsome offensive lines in Cincinnati. His yardage totals and yards per carry took a big hit in his sophomore season, but he still managed to score 11 touchdowns. And in most fantasy leagues, those touchdown numbers trump all other statistics. At number 18, Ryan Matthews. DeMarco Murray was traded to Tennessee in the offseason, which means that Matthews now has a chance to take over as the Eagles' featured running back. Last season, Matthews averaged 5.1 yards per carry, but he only received 106 carries on the year, limiting his fantasy value. With Murray out of the way and head coach Doug Peterson known to make the most of his running backs, look for big things from Matthews in 2016. At number 17, CJ Anderson. Last season, many fantasy owners pegged CJ Anderson as a late first round, early second round pick, only to watch him produce more like waiver wire fodder. This season, we're giving him another chance, albeit he's now more of a low-end RB2 with upside as opposed to a surefire RB1. His offensive line is terrible, but with the murky quarterback situation and Ronnie Hillman on the bubble to start training camp, much of the Broncos' offense could run through Anderson by default, making him an interesting fantasy selection. At number 16, Dion Lewis. Lewis's stats from last season aren't that all impressive until you realize he only did it in 7 games. After sitting out the previous 2 seasons, Lewis came out of nowhere to become the waiver wire gem of 2015. Sadly, his bid for Comeback Player of the Year came to an end in Week 9 when he suffered a torn ACL against the Redskins. He averaged 12 fantasy points per game last year, and he's expected to be ready for the start of the season. In PPR leagues, he's easily a top 10 running back. Number 15, Carlos Hyde. Carlos Hyde rocketed out of the gate in 2015, going off for 182 total yards and 2 touchdowns during a Monday night battle against the Vikings in Week 1. But after that, he failed to total more than 100 yards in a game and scored just one more touchdown before a foot injury ended his season in Week 7. Injuries in a weak O-line will keep Hyde from reaching RB1 status, but with Chip Kelly running the offense, the third-year back has a chance to make some more noise on both the ground and in the passing game. At number 14, Thomas Rawls. The bad news for Rawls is that he plays behind one of the league's worst offensive lines, and he'll also have rookies CJ Prosise and Alex Collins breathing down his neck for carries. The good news is that even with a questionable O-line last season, he still averaged 15 fantasy points in games he started. If he can hold off his competition in the backfield, Rawls could pay huge dividends in 2016. At number 13, the Packers' Eddie Lacy. Now, Fat Eddie Lacy was a huge disappointment in 2015, reaching double-digit fantasy points in just 6 of his 15 games played, despite being a first-round pick in most fantasy leagues. So why should we trust him in 2016? Well, because Fat Eddie Lacy is now Skinny Eddie Lacy after spending the entire offseason working out with P90X guru Tony Horton. And he also plays behind a very solid offensive line. Look for them to open up plenty of big holes enough for Lacy's new slender frame to fit through. At number 12, Latavius Murray. Latavius appears to have all the tools to be an elite NFL running back, but he's yet to figure out how to properly use those tools. That has many questioning Murray heading into the 2016 season, but we're not ready to give up on him just yet. With one of the league's top offensive lines, a strong passing game, little competition in the backfield, and an added year of experience, this could be the year when the 26-year-old Raiders running back makes the leap to fantasy stardom. At number 11, Jamaal Charles. Charles provides fantasy owners with quite the enigma. How can you not want to draft someone so talented Yet how can you trust someone who's so injury-riddled? In the first 5 games that he did play last season, Charles was great, averaging 16 fantasy points per contest. The good news is it was only the second season in his career in which he missed more than 2 games. But he'll be turning 30 in December, and he has 2 very capable running backs waiting in the wings in Charcandrick West and Spencer Ware. He's also suffered 2 season-ending ACL injuries in the past 5 seasons. If you decide to take Charles in 2016, be sure to grab one or both of his backups for insurance. At number 10, LeSean McCoy. Shady's first season with the Buffalo Bills was a little underwhelming thanks in large part to 2 separate hamstring and MCL injuries, which cost him a total of 4 games. But it wasn't all bad for the 28-year-old running back. During a 7-game stretch from week 7 to week 14, McCoy gained over 100 total yards in each contest. He scored double-digit fantasy points in 9 of 12 contests, and his 235 touches last season were the fewest he's received since his rookie year back in 2009. With fresh legs, a solid offensive line, and Carlos Williams out of the picture, Shady has a shot at squeaking out at least one more big season for fantasy owners. At number 9, Le'Veon Bell. So here's the deal with Le'Veon Bell. Assuming his 4-game suspension holds up, we have him in the number 9 slot, right? Losing him for the first 4 games isn't the worst thing that could happen, though. He'll come in fresh in week 5, and missing those first 4 contests improves his chances of staying healthy through the fantasy playoffs. Bell averaged over 98 total yards in the 6 games he did play last season, and in 2014, when he played in all 16 contests, he had 2,215 total yards and 11 touchdowns. If he isn't suspended, he's a top 3 running back. If he is suspended, you can still take him anytime after the second round with confidence. Just make sure you get D'Angelo Williams as well. At number 8, Doug Martin. After looking like a stud during his rookie year, Doug Martin was one of the fantasy football's biggest busts for the following 2 seasons. But he regained his relevance in the fantasy world in 2015, finishing 3rd among all running backs in points with 199. Martin did most of his work on the ground last season, but he's definitely more capable of making an impact in the passing game, recording 49 receptions for 472 yards as a rookie. With word out of Bucs camp suggesting that the team intends to give him added targets in the passing game, you can expect more big things from the muscle hamster in 2016. At number 7, Mark Ingram. Some of the reasons you should draft Mark Ingram early include his 12.75 average fantasy points per game last season and his offensive line, which was among the best run blocking units in the league in 2015. Reasons you shouldn't draft him include his knack for getting hurt, as he's played in all 16 games just once in his career. We're going to side with the positives here, and also we like the way Sean Payton has been using Ingram more and more in the passing game the past few seasons. The 26-year-old former Alabama running back is well worth a pick in round 2 of your draft. At number 6, Lamar Miller. Miller had a terrific 2015 season, finishing 6th among running backs in fantasy points. He managed to rank that high despite receiving such a small amount of touches. Lamar Miller's knock for the past couple of years has been with regards to the way the Dolphins used him. The 25-year-old running back received just 254 and 241 total touches in 2014 and 2015 respectively, despite playing in all 16 games in each of those 2 seasons. A lack of opportunities should not be an issue in 2016. The Texans let Arian Foster go during the offseason with the intention of handing the workhorse role over to Miller. If he proves he can handle the increased workload, this could be a monster season for the 5th-year running back. At number 5, Ezekiel Elliott. I'm usually not a fan of drafting rookie running backs in the first round, but Elliott is an exception. It has nothing to do with his skill set, which appeared to be pretty impressive during his 3 years at Ohio State. Rather, it has everything to do with the Cowboys' offensive line, which is easily the best in the league, and may also be considered one of the best ever. If Darren McFadden can average 4.6 yards per carry while recording over 1,000 yards behind this line, just think what a talented running back like Elliott can do. Number 4, Devonta Freeman. Devonta Freeman was backing up rookie Tevin Coleman for the first 2 games of 2015, and he missed another game due to injury, but he still managed to finish first among NFL running backs in fantasy points. After taking over the starting role, he went off for 37, 33, 25, and 27 points in each of the next 4 weeks. He'd eventually cool off during the stretch, but he averaged over 16 points per game while reaching double digits in 11 of those 13 games in which he started. Coleman should cut into Freeman's workload in 2016, but that should also keep his legs fresh for the final stretch of the fantasy season. At number 3, David Johnson. Had David Johnson started for the Arizona Cardinals from week 1 last season, there's a good chance he would have led all running backs in fantasy points. Despite starting in just 5 contests and receiving only 161 total touches, he finished 7th among running backs in points. And after taking over the starting role in week 13, he went on for 18, 12, 41, and 19 points in his next 4 games, leading many of his owners to fantasy glory. With the reins being handed over to David Johnson for the 2016 season, it's not unreasonable to suggest that the sophomore running back will lead all running backs in fantasy points. At number 2, Adrian Peterson. Adrian Peterson will enter the 2016 season at the ripe age of 31, which is considered ancient in running back years. But in 2015, at the prehistoric age of 30, he still led all NFL running backs in rushing yards with 1,485. In every season in which he's played at least 14 games, AP has totaled over 1,400 total yards and 10 touchdowns. The Vikings also added Alex Boone and Andre Smith in the offseason to help solidify the right side of their O-line. Until I actually witness Peterson's decline with my very own eyes, he'll continue to be one of the most trustworthy fantasy running backs in my books. At number 1, Todd Gurley from the new Los Angeles Rams. After sitting out the first 2 games of his rookie year and playing sparingly in his third, Gurley exploded onto the scene, totaling at least 146 yards in each of his next 4 contests. The Rams' 2015 first-round pick finished with double-digit fantasy points in 10 of his 12 starts en route to Offensive Rookie of the Year honors. Will Gurley take the next step and earn Fantasy Player of the Year honors in his sophomore season? I'd be willing to put my first overall pick on it that he does. And there you have it, the top 20 running backs for the 2016 fantasy football season. Did this help you prepare for your fantasy draft? Be sure to like our channel and come back for more fantasy football analysis as well as plenty of other awesome sports videos. And if there's anything you'd like to see us do in the future, be sure to let us know in the comments section below.